Hello and welcome to another video on YouTube channel of tutorialspedia.com. This video is part of MuleSoft series of video tutorials covering different topics about MuleSoft. In this video, we will be covering Java module in Mule 4 and we will see that how we can invoke Java methods in Mule 4 from AnyPoint Studio. Let's have a look at the details of the topics that are part of this video tutorial. First of all, we will have a high-level overview of Mule 4 Java module, where I will explain what Mule 4 Java module is and what are the use cases where this comes handy and it's useful. And then we will have a demonstration where I will be implementing a simple use case and all of the available functions in the Java module will be covered, including invoke static, new, and validate type. Once I will be implementing these functions and using these functions from the module, I will be explaining what exactly each of these does. So now, before I proceed with the demonstration, let's have a theoretical explanation of Java module in Mule 4. This Java module provides you a bunch of functions which you can use to invoke custom Java code, and it becomes quite useful if you want to hook up some of the custom Java code that you have written already, or if you have a separate Java team which is implementing some Java code in the Java classes, then you can easily get that embedded or integrated into your message flow together with the other message processors or other activities that you have in your flow. And the use cases where we might have a need to use Java module is can vary depending on your organizational needs. But some of the use cases can be that take an example that you are implementing your integration flows using AnyPoint Studio with Mule 4, but you have a lot of legacy Java code which is already written by your Java team, but you don't want that everything from Java should be converted into the message flows using some of the available connectors or available module functionalities. Rather, you want to reuse or utilize the existing code. So that is one case where you will prefer to to let your Java team implement the Java code, and you will simply get that embedded or integrated into the message flow. And for that purpose, you will use available function from the Java module. Another scenario can be that maybe there is some specific type of requirement which cannot be implemented from any of the currently available modules or connectors in your Mule 4. And for those cases, if that functionality can be easily implemented using Java with available Java libraries, you will simply implement that in Java custom classes and then get that embedded or integrated into the Mule 4 message flow. For example, it might be a just trivial example, not a real-time example, but let's consider it for the sake of simplicity, that maybe you have a requirement that you have to play around with some of the graphics or some of the photos, like you have to resize some images, or you have to make some other uh, tuning or other changes for some images. So for that, if you have to use Java code with the java.awt functions and libraries, you can do all that. So in that case, you will prefer that you implement your code for the photo editing or photo resizing or photo enhancement or whatever functionalities you want in the Java code, and then simply you can call those functions, those methods from the Java classes using the available module functions. So you can think of plenty of other use cases where this can be important. So the bottom line is that since Java is quite popular and you often come across some code already written in Java, so it's always important that any of the integration tool you're using must have capabilities and support to get it integrated with the Java code. And most of the tools, including this Mule for AnyPoint Studio, does provide this support. So now I hope that the explanation for this Mule 4 Java module is clear to you. I will jump into the demonstration for all of the functions from the Java module. All right, so I have already created a project and I'm going to start my implementation for the use case. First of all, you have to make sure that Java module is added into the list of modules. And by default, when you create a project, only core, HTTP, and socket modules are available. And let me remove and edit again so that you know how to edit. And if you have to edit, you just have to go to add module because it's readily available there in the list of available modules. So just select Java module and drag it here. And now you can see that the Java module with the currently latest version 1.2.9 is made available. And it has a total of 4 operations: invoke static, new, and validate type. All of these we are going to cover in this video tutorial. All right, so the first thing that I need to do is to create Java classes. So what I'm going to do is that in the src main Java, I'm going to create some new classes. So the class that I will create first is a simple class. Let's name it tutorialspedia and let's give it some package name com.tutorialspedia.java module demo, and else other than this we will keep it as is by default. So I'll just click on finish and we got the class created. And in the class, I'm going to implement two methods, one static method and another one which is non-static because that will need class instance in order to invoke that method. So the methods will be implemented with a simple logic. So first one will be public int get age. Okay, this should be public static because I want to make it static to call it using invoke static operation from the Java module, and the input that it's expecting is name in the form of string. So I will just return an integer age based on some simple condition. If name dot equals tutorialspedia, then it's going to return 10, else it's going to return 3. So this is a simple logic that I'm implementing. Sorry, else I forgot to write return 3. And now I'm going to implement a second method, public string get result and int marks. So this simple method is getting integer input marks, and based on the marks it's returning the result. So again I will make it simple. If marks greater than 33, return pass, else return failed. So this is another simple implementation. So with this we have completed a simple class that we are going to use. Now let's go back to our uh, message flow where we are going to do the real implementation. So I will use HTTP listener because we want to make sure that this message flow gets invoked from the client side using the HTTP GET request. And in the listener, I'm going to make the configurations for the path as slash demo. And in the connector configuration, let's configure the connection, and you have to specify the host. We will keep it default, and let's put it 8099. You can put any of the available port for this HTTP connection. Okay, so once you have configured the connection, next thing I want to do is that we want to invoke the static method. So without making anything else like logging or any other complex scenarios, we just want to invoke the static method based on a query parameter and something we will receive in the query parameter, which will be the name, and that one we will pass as an input to this method. So for that purpose, let's go to the general configuration of this invoke static. The first thing is that we have to select the class. We created the class with an tutorialspedia, so we will just select the class, and in the methods we can select any of the available methods. So it has only one static method, get each, which gets selected, And now in the arguments we have to pass arguments. So let's, because it's expecting a string, so let's switch to uh, this expression mode and write, because the input should be in the Java format, so we will do it accordingly. So I will write mod dw2.o, and the output needs to be in application slash Java. By the way, you can have a transform message activity before this, and you can do all this over there as well and just pass the input. But let's do it here for now. And name attributes dot query params dot name. Sorry, dot name. I will make it small case. It's not necessary that the method input name and the name of the query parameter must be same. It can be different, doesn't matter. So this is the input that we are going to pass, and next we are going to use my favorite transform message activity, because the response that I want to pass to the client needs to be in the JSON format, not in the Java format. So I will write here, let's create an element with the in the JSON with the name response. So this is the key, and the value is going to be the payload. So this is the JSON response that we will be returning to the client. So now I'm going to run this project in the embedded. Okay, let me stop it and run it again. So this is a simple implementation where I will show you how we can use invoke static from the Java module. So once it will be running, we will go to the client. In our case, we will use Postman, and from there I'll try to hit the service. So I'll write http localhost colon 8099. Let me verify the port that we used. Yes. So we will use 8099 slash demo question mark name is equal to tutorialspedia. Okay, let me just verify that the project has been deployed. So we can see that the status is deployed. This means it's running fine. Okay, so now we will try to hit the service from the client. Okay, now when I try to hit the service, you can see that we got the response as 10, because in the implementation of our Java code, we already configured, we did like this, that whenever the name is tutorialspedia, it should return 10. So if the name is anything else, it will return 3. So let's put something else like test. And you can see that now the response is 3. So this is simple implementation of the class. In your real scenarios in the class, you, of course, in the class method, you have some other complex logic, but I think with this, the purpose should be clear to you that how you can use this. Now I'm going to proceed with the additional functions from the Java module. So what we will do is that now we will implement this invoke, which is going to invoke our instance-based method from the class. So invoke operation, if you see here, it's expecting an instance of the class in its configuration. This means that you cannot call this instance-based method unless you have created an instance of the class. So for that purpose, you will have to use this new operation. So first we will have to instantiate the class, and then we will have to invoke the method. So in the new, we will have to select the class first, that we want to make the instance of which class. So we will choose tutorialspedia, and then it will use the default constructor. So default constructor without any arguments. And one more thing we have to do is that in the advanced, we have to specify that the object that will get created, where we want to save it. So in the target variables, I will just create a simple variable my object, and this my object is going to contain this payload. All right, so this is straightforward. Now in the invoke, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to refer to that instance, and that is inside the variable was.myObject. It's showing you some error, but ignore that, because when you will run it, it will work seamlessly. And in the methods and the class, we have to select. So let's select the tutorialspedia class that we have already created. And in the methods, we will select this get result, because this is the method that we created in the class, which is a non-static method. It's expecting an integer as an input. So here in the arguments, let's try to provide it the input. Okay, so I'll have to write it in application slash Java, because that's the format it's expecting, and marks. Again, it will be from the query parameters in our use case, attributes dot query params dot marks. Okay, so in the output, we will not make any changes because the payload will be going into the response. So very simple. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to load this, and then we will see that how we can test it from the client. In this case, in the client side, instead of name, we will pass marks. If we pass more than 33, we are expecting that we will get a success. We will get a response as pass. And if it's less than 33, we are expecting that the response will contain fail. So I'll pass 50, but let's see that the project has been deployed or not. So it's still getting deployed into the embedded runtime. So it's deployed now. So let's now go to the Postman and try. So you can see that once I pass 50, we got the response as pass. So now I will try to pass a value less than 33. Let's put only 3. And we can see that the response says failed. This is how you do this invocation of your non-static or instance-based methods from your message flows using Java module. Okay, now the last thing that I want to demonstrate is validate type. So once you create a method using once you create an instance of a class using this new operation, it creates instance of the provided class, and then you use that to invoke a method. But there can be cases where you have complex message flow where you are creating instance of many classes. So you want to validate the type of the instance that is created before you do the invocation. So this validate type comes handy in those cases. So in validate type, you validate the instance against the class to make sure that it's valid. So in our case, we will select the class, same class tutorialspedia, and the instance that we have created is stored in vars.myObject. So in this case, this object, as you know from the previous demonstration, that it's already of the same class. So we are expecting that it should work seamlessly because this is the happy scenario. So I'll just run it, and once I will run it and try to call this from the Postman, I'm expecting that it should work as is because it's a happy scenario, and the validation should pass because the type of the class instance and the type of the class that is selected in a validate type matches. So we should not have any errors. Let's wait for it to get loaded. So now you can see that it is deployed. So let's try to run it, and it's working as before because nothing has changed. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create another class. Let me stop it. So I will create another class, a simple class, and I will name it as dummy. You can name it anything. So this is another class that we created, and now what I will do is that intentionally, in order to make an error in the validate, this object, as you know, is of containing instance of type instance of the class tutorialspedia. But here in the class, now I'm going to select dummy class. So I'm trying to compare it with a class which should return an error because the instance doesn't match the class that we are going to specify. Okay, now let me load it again. And now I'm expecting that once I will invoke this HTTP GET service from the Postman, then I should be getting an error, and the error should state wrong instance class. Okay, so let's wait for it to get loaded. Okay, so now I'm going to try it, and you can see it says expected an instance of type com.tutorialspedia.javamodule.dummy, but was com.tutorialspedia.javamodule.tutorialspedia because of the mismatch. And if you go to AnyPoint Studio, you can see the error type is wrong instance class. So this way you do the validation of your uh, instances before you use those for the invocation of the instance-based class methods. So that's it from this video tutorial. I hope that the information that I tried to convey in the simplest possible manner is helpful for you, and it should give you a good jump start to implement more complex scenarios. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and just look into the other videos in the MuleSoft playlist where I'm covering, and I have already covered a lot of topics and more is yet to come. And for any official documentation and official help, you can always refer to the MuleSoft official documentation, which contains latest information. Thank you very much.